so it's really his fault. James was there right from the very beginning of e-commerce, so what we're going to do is take a look back at how e-commerce has developed and some of the little missteps that were done along the way. And then we're going to do that to sort of position ourselves to look forward about what might happen in the future. So, James, over to you for now.
Thanks very much, Andy. Well, thank you all very much for being here. It's been a while that I've been messing about with this IMRG stuff. What I did was I wrote a book about IMRG's kind of history. Is this feeding back for you, or is it okay? It's okay. So just a bit of context. I'm going to tell you where I think the key important things are going for e-commerce, but just a little bit of context to give where I'm coming from and what I've seen. So I thought I'd start by just reading the very first sort of author's note from my book. I'll just give you some of the context. When Sunday shopping was being legalized in 1993, there were no retail websites, and online shopping was considered by almost all of the few people who had ever even heard of it to be a fanciful idea that would never catch on. I was already 3 years into running the Interactive Media and Retail Group, IMRG, a small retail research project that we had set up to try and get people to realize that e-commerce was going to be huge and to develop them to help them get their heads around it. That year we encountered the internet hands-on for the first time, 1993. It didn't seem to make any sense at all. The very idea was just weird. Yet the shrill, screeching, crackling hiss of a dial-up modem heralded the fast approaching transformation of consumer choice from not so much to everything. Even then, I realized that I was going to have to write a book someday as a testament to the rise of e-retail from its beginnings in 1990. So I began to compile the now vast archive on which it's based. So that's just some of the background. It's really astonishing how much we have seen change and how e-commerce has impacted everything, life and absolutely everything in just 30 years. I think I'll just dip into another wee bit of this, give you some context of what retail was like in 1990. Shopping in 1990 was not like it is today. If you wanted to buy, say, a sofa, a suit, or a pair of taps, you would have to visit the shops twice. Firstly, to discover what was available by asking questions and trusting the word of the salesperson, and a second time to buy the item you had chosen if it was still in stock. This was not always convenient in Britain, with its unpredictable weather, expensive parking, and the worst transport system in Europe. The shops might be shut when inspiration fired your purchasing quest. Most of the shops were closed on Sunday, the day of rest, while half-day closing, typically but not always on a Wednesday, was both a tradition and required by law. Shop opening hours were commonly 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m, and many also shop for lunch. So for people working normal office hours, the opportunities for going shopping could be narrow. John Lewis didn't open at all on Mondays to give its staff a 2-day weekend, leaving would-be customers who forgot or didn't know beginning their week frustrated at John Lewis Partners' shuttered doors. So, I mean, it's hard to imagine just how much it's changed in that time. And, you know, when we started out, it was through sheer frustration that some of us had been working with technology and we could sense where e-commerce was going. But back in 1990, we had nothing. We had no payment systems, we had no delivery was, retail delivery was something might turn up in the next 3 or 4 weeks. You know, none of the tools existed. Security wasn't there, browsers weren't there. And it was 1994, just over 30 years ago, that we saw the first ever secure online transaction. So Andy's been here an awful long time, and You know, one of the critical things that IMRG has always been there for is data. So, Andy, how important is data to IMRG now?
Can you hear me? I think it's kind of the reason that people come and see what we're talking about, really, is that we benchmark that stuff. So a lot of the stuff remains true, that you only know what, you know a lot of stuff about your own business, but you don't know what the hell's going on outside it. And I think that's probably why it's so important and will remain so.
Right. Well, in 2000, the very first thing that happened in 2000, January the 1st, was Yeltsin handed over power of Russia to Putin, who's been there far too long, I think most of us would agree. The other thing that happened early in 2000 was the dot-com crash. There'd been this bubbling up at the end of the 1990s, and it all collapsed, it all fell away. And so traditional retailers have been very slow to recognize and invest or do anything about e-commerce. And when the dot-com crash happened, they thought, thank God, that's finished, we'll forget all about it, and they didn't do anything at all. So e-commerce in 2000 stopped. What little was going on actually stopped. And the problem was that with the dot-com bust going, there was no money to invest in e-commerce. Some people who had the vision for it and were trying to do something about it, they found it absolutely impossible to raise any funds because there was no data. There was not even a definition, a usable definition of what retail was then. So you couldn't get any money to invest in developing e-retail because nobody knew what the market was, how big it was it growing, what was it worth, how many parcels were being sent, and that sort of thing. And of course in retail, this information is so sensitive, you know, retailers are very reluctant to share it. And we had to start from scratch, firstly to create definitions of what online retail was, and then find ways of getting the retailers to trust us with their information and sales and general data about e-commerce, because without that we were never going to know how big the market was. It was just everybody guessing at it. So from the beginning we started with no information at all about the size and shape of the market. So data has been the key, and that was one of the critical things that IMRG did to achieve its place in the marketplace, which these guys, I'm delighted to see are continuing with today.
Can I just ask about, you said delivery, you'd sort of order something, it might turn up in 4 weeks. How did it go from it might turn up in 4 weeks to actually there's a delivery network?
Well, it went the hard way. I mean, the Royal Mail absolutely didn't do anything at all. It was a classic problem of delivery was too expensive, and the delivery companies couldn't afford to provide fast delivery because the retailers weren't prepared to pay for it. So it was the hard way. And again, the data that we provided of the market growing and the value of providing delivery options was absolutely critical to enabling the retailers to find a way forward. I think I should jump straight into some of the predictions that I have for the market. One, I think will surprise some people, is that I think Amazon at the end of the day is going to be nationalized. And the reason is that I don't think governments are going to have any option. What we've seen with governments is since 1945 we've been in thrall to the City of London, and the money markets have been leading everything, and the banks have been leading everything. Just think of the disastrous consequences of that: bankers' bonuses, technology, lack of investment. All of the things that government should have done has not been done. The market's been left to its own devices. And what they didn't understand was the way that technology moves power into fewer and fewer hands. The people who control technology end up with the power. And I mean, it's not Amazon's fault that they pay very little tax in comparison to, if you think, historically, retail was the biggest employer in Britain for centuries. So the largest workforce in Britain was retail, and that was focused on the high street. Now, the high street's been sublimed by e-commerce, and Amazon is at the front of that. It's not their fault they don't pay tax. Amazon pays all the tax that's asked of it. It's that governments haven't taxed, governments worldwide, not just the British government, they haven't recognised what's going on and moved their position in accordance with it. And what we're going to see is it's going to get much, much worse, because there are so many negative things coming our way as an economy and as a population. Since I was born, 1951, the world population has trebled from 2.5 million to 8 million people, 8 billion people now. It's projected to be 100 billion by the end of this century. Now, if you think of the global warming and the migration of populations, all the things that are happening, we've lived in a very soft society, and governments have just let the market run. Laissez-faire's been the word, and I think that will change. We've seen riots recently. It's going to get much more intense, and I think that when COVID hit, Amazon declared, Bezos declared, quite rightly I think, that Amazon had become the fourth emergency service, because it was the only way to get stuff to people. Everything else collapsed. You couldn't go shopping, you couldn't go out, you couldn't mix with people. That became the critical way of distribution. So that monopoly is only increasing, and with food and grocery moving online, as it inexorably will, you're going to get to a critical mass where this distribution method and the logistics associated with e-commerce are going to be the bedrock of everything, and it cannot really be allowed to just be run by foreign companies that are purely motivated by profit. So I think that's going to be prediction number one. Prediction number two from me is social media platforms are going to be reassessed as publishers. It's absolutely clear to me that the only way social media can be controlled is if the publishers have to follow the same rules as publishers of newspapers or any other media, television, and they're not being done at the moment, and it just can't continue the way it is, and I think that is going to change. With most people, at the moment, 50% of people live in cities, and with a growing population, we're going to see even more people. 80% of people are projected to live in cities by the end of this century. So we're looking at a situation where the logistics and e-commerce is going to be fundamental to that, and technology will be enabling far more personalization. And what we're coming to is a total transformation of the marketplace and society driven by e-commerce. So, Andy,
so you mentioned earlier on the internet in the early 90s. It was like, what's this thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, it'll probably come to nothing. And then eventually, arguably, it's become something. But there's lots of technologies now that have tried to make quite a big impact, and they haven't really got there, right? So if you think of something like augmented reality, for example, or virtual reality for that matter, which has actually been around, for decades. The metaverse sort of popped up for a while and then didn't really do a great deal.
Right.
AI is like the buzz term
Right.
to end them all at the moment. So you have all these sort of different technologies. None of them have really properly made it yet. And I just wonder if there's any of them where you think that one feels like it's going to get there.
Well, AI is different because it's not just a new phase of technology, it's kind of all-consuming. Humans have always considered themselves to be the most intelligent things, and very shortly we're not going to be the most intelligent things. So is that going to be good news when more smarter things than humans stop wars or the other things, the crazy stuff that we do all the time? Augmented reality and those things, it's still very early days. They've got everywhere to grow in education and manufacturing and many other areas. Another thing that I think is very important to think about is that certainly the next decade is going to be about decarbonisation and dematerialisation. And I mean, not only is e-commerce the way people shop and where they shop, it's changed the very nature of owning things and products themselves. For example, digital innovation reduced the range of goods and stores that could profitably sell by making some obsolete and dematerializing others. For example, smartphones contain a camera, a clock, a calculator, dictionary, compass, calendar, address book, music player, mail service, bank, encyclopedia, maps, video, sound recorder, library, photo album, pedometer, torch, and all sorts of other things. Sat-nav, tape measure, spirit level, guitar tuner, metronome, notepad, that previously were individual products or services sold out of retail floor space that is no longer viable for that purpose. Similarly, the way that media, newspapers, books, music, movies, videos and games is consumed changed, making other types of store space obsolete. We're going to see more of that. I mean, just imagine what more can be, what we take as physical items, how that is going to change. And owning them will change, people will share more, they will just reappraise the whole approach to stuff, what we think about it, how we own it, how we buy it, the price of it. As commodities become scarce, there's going to be a huge impact there.
It's quite a...
So I'm struggling with the sound system here. I'm getting feedback in my ears, and it's difficult.
There's quite a cyclical sort of nature to a lot of this stuff, right? So if you think of SMS, right? So you've been able to send people SMS for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a real surge of interest at the moment among retailers that maybe this can be a channel that they can use for marketing, right? It's got its problems, because obviously that's kind of your personal thing, but for whatever reason, maybe because a lot of people use WhatsApp, and so they don't necessarily send SMS anymore, that's kind of becoming talked about as a possible opportunity, right? So it's not a new technology in the slightest.
Right.
But it kind of comes around. And I think the other thing is vintage, right? So this has become a very big deal. But eBay, was that 1998 eBay came around, and then people could sell stuff through
95.
it. You have this sort of second-hand type thing that goes on. But you've been able to do that for a long time.
Yes.
Gumtree, etc. as well. But vintage just seems to have struck a chord where it's become sort of culturally interesting to people, and it's made sort of second-hand quite cool, if you like. And it seems to me that that's a big problem for retailers who are selling B2C. If people are selling C2C more, or is it just the eBay thing again, and everything else will just carry on going?
I just got a message that something I listed on eBay is sold. So. That's right. Vintage and sharing. I mean, just what is happening. At the moment, the rich are getting richer, and technology is driving that. And we've got this insane situation where a handful of people on the planet own most of the resources, and they're calling all the shots. Sharing and vintage and all of that is part of a move to the cloud economy. We're being able to share by tech giants, but on their terms. We're giving away our freedom, our information, our intelligence, our preferences, and historically, advertising that's been a fair trade. People have accepted that for the exchange of some information, they get a benefit or a discount or something like that. But do we really want a future that is controlled that way when it goes completely over the top, and you've got Silicon Bang, controlling everything that we're allowed to see, and it's all controlled by an algorithm. Now AI driven, so even more intensely able to manipulate us and everything that we do. I don't know. You've got a world population that is going to be so big, and we're running out of world, and the whole of the financial, the drive of the financial industry and government is still based on growth, and we run out of planet. We can't continue just growing all the time. I mean, the conversation today naturally has been about growth, but we have to find a new set of values that go beyond growth, and sooner rather than later, because we've only got this one planet, and we're exhausting it at a rate of knots. The population increase, everything that we're seeing around us, the demands for absolutely everything can't be sustained. So growth is unsustainable, so I don't know where we go with that. That's going to be way beyond e-commerce.
With the e-commerce market, when I came to IMRG first, I said to you, am I joining a good industry here? Because it was the shadow of the sort of credit crunch and everything. And I said, is this a good industry or what? And you said, it just keeps going like that. And at the time that was true, and it did carry on doing that for a while. It was sort of immune to the macro rubbish that went on. So market crash, e-commerce carried on growing. But now it's big. It's not immune to that stuff anymore. And we've got into a bit of a muddle where you had the COVID spike, and then we've ended up in negative growth for 4 years or whatever it is now.
Yes.
And conversion has kind of dropped down quite a lot.
Right.
The traffic has been under pressure and everything. So it just feels like there's quite a lot of negative pressure on it. But how does it get out of this mire, do you think?
Well, globally we saw 50% increase in e-commerce when COVID happened, and naturally that big boost in e-commerce has taken years to normalise. So e-commerce over 30 years is doing that, so we had that hiccup in it, and because of that rise, we then saw a fall. But I think it's very interesting because we have to find a way of not relying on growth. I think this industry, right now, if it's doing okay without growth, just staying on a flat market, we can't keep growing forever. It's impossible. The resources aren't there. We're not able to do that. Mother Nature feeds our needs, not our greeds. And there has to be a way beyond it. And I think if this industry is learning to exist and do well and expect a future without growth, that's actually a very positive thing.
Do you think the sort of dreams that we were sold in e-commerce a few years ago, so if you go back, 10 years, it was big data, and then big data sort of moved on to be personalisation kind of thing. And we've talked about it for a long time, one-to-one personalisation and this single view of customer and all the rest of it. And it always feels a bit artist impression of actual reality. And you sort of move around and products just kind of come to you from all sorts of places and things,
Right.
Do you think we're sort of going to get to a point where that actually is a sort of reality, this sort of, as you walk around, you do get a really relevant alert. Oh my God, you're right, I do need that right now, and it's there. Do you think that's even possible, or do you think that it's just a bit daft, it's just a load of marketing talk, and ultimately the sort of barriers to data privacy and things will shut it out?
I think we'll quite soon get to the point where the marketing isn't done to you personally, it's done to your avatar, or it's done to your algorithm that knows you better than you do, and is figuring out in the background. So, you know, the whole method of advertising and presenting products to a degree is likely to change, and it's not going to be about selling to people, it's going to be selling to technology.
Have you got any more slides?
Sorry?
Have you got more slides?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot the slides. So yeah, I mean, what we've seen over the last 30 years has been an incredible soup of everything. And IMRG just didn't just record it. We actually set about solving the problems. So there were thousands and thousands of impossible problems when IMRG started, and we systematically over years tackled every one of them. And I think this is the big learning from my book, is that, you know, situations change, but humans and their responses to it basically doesn't. It carries on the same. And I mean, what I've encapsulated here is the way industries fought back. The electrical manufacturers and retailers tried every trick in the book to stop it. We've seen all sorts of opportunities offered to government to use this for good, to use e-commerce and you know, the internet to support society, and they haven't. It's been given away to technology companies, mainly foreign technology companies, who are profiteering out of it. So one of the things in the book, of course, is the timeline, which is very important to remember just how recent many of these things were. You know, many people thought Apple was dead. They were predicted to have no future in the telephone. And yet we saw in 2015 the amount of trade happening over smartphones exceeding the trade happening on every other platform that people were using. So I think I'm really at the close of what I wanted to cover today, but if I can just invite people to, you know, if you can, try and take a longer term view of what's going on here and a bigger picture view. The conversations I've been listening to today are all very short term. Where's the profit? What do I do next week? And I think this has been a huge problem, certainly for government, but also for retailers, because it's been so short term. People are looking here when they should have been looking far further. For years, what we heard was, look, the only people most active in this area are Amazon, and they're not making any money. We heard that for year after year after year, and now look at where we are, because Amazon took the long-term view. You know, it's not their fault they're so successful. They provide an absolutely brilliant service, which is why we all use it. But this is where governments should and need to come in to manage and control these things, because their job is to look after us, society, and they haven't. They've just been letting the market run free. But again, it's kind of not their fault. Governments don't understand this stuff. They're not motivated to care. They've got millions of other problems on their plate. So really, it's up to us as an industry, although I'm a bit past it now, but it's up to industry to provide intelligence that informs the people who can actually do something about it. And at the moment, it's falling to government. And with a change of government, I hope there may be a change of approach to a lot of things that are going wrong.
All right. James, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think that's kind of the end of our theatre today. We've got a load more presentations tomorrow if you're coming back. If you can actually stomach coming back to the Excel Centre on day 2. I'll be here because I have to, it's my job. But it's entirely up to you if you do. So thanks a lot if you've been with us today, and hope to see some of you tomorrow.